My name is Deana Bass Williams. I am a partner at Bass Public Affairs. It is a public affairs firm that I own with my sister, Dee Dee Bass Wilbon. We like to say we help people get in and out of the media. So we work with politicians, business leaders, community organizations to help them amplify their message. We also say that we sell ideas, not widgets. And by that, I mean we help people share their ideas and policies in the marketplace and not necessarily selling a watch or a purse or an item. We actually help market ideas. I believe that op-eds are one of the most powerful tools of communications that individuals and organizations can use to amplify their message. And I say that because it is a way for you to completely control the message, because you have the power to to write exactly what you want to say. It's one of those areas where you can edit and re-edit, and then you present it to the world. It's an important component of earned media, but it also has a little bit of owned media in that you actually you get to craft and determine exactly what you're saying. So most people put it in the earned media category, but I actually believe that it kind of overlaps earned and owned media. Yes, I had no idea that women were so underrepresented in op-ed writing or in the editorial board space until I actually started considering this segment. And it's really interesting to see that in some of the best known major newspapers that women really are underrepresented in the editorial department. And so the New York Times, 23% of the writers are women, 77% are men. Washington Post, 24% women, 76% men. LA Times, 17% women, 83% men. The Wall Street Journal, 12% women, 88% men. And so again, this is something that we at Bass Public Affairs, we are in the op-ed business all the time for our clients. So we had no clue that it was so underrepresented. We do believe that because op-eds are so widely read, and it's one of the places that most readers, whether it's online news, online journals, or print journals, people go to the op-eds, they go to the sports section, they go, these are standards that people turn to. And so the fact that women's voices are so underrepresented in those spaces, I think it actually, for me as a woman who is on the PR side of journalism, it certainly has opened my eyes, and now I want to do even more to make sure that women are sharing their opinions, because I think that those things are that voice, that perspective is hugely important. When you want to write an op-ed, I think that there are some very, very important things that you must consider. We like to talk about clarity, courage, and competence in everything that we do. And so when you're writing an op-ed, we believe that you should have clarity. You should know exactly what you want to talk about. An op-ed is not a place to talk about 13 things, 3 things, or even 2 things. An op-ed is a place to have a conversation about one clear topic. So clarity. And so then there's the courage to actually say what you mean and to plant your feet and actually write it. And by that, we mean an op-ed is not a place to give both sides of an opinion. It is your place to give your opinion, the courage to stick to your word and to actually stand for something. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge the merits in other arguments, but you are making your case for your opinion, your argument. So this is not a place to straddle the fence. This is a place to plant your feet and give your opinion. So we have clarity, and then that's the courage. And then we also need competence. So you need to write about the things that you are competent in. And, we write for people who are competent in a host of areas. So we write for their voice, but when you're writing your own op-ed, you need to write in an area where you have a level of expertise. Now, there is also the possibility of writing about your incompetence, and that can be a place of your expertise in not being competent in something. For instance, I consider myself a gardener, but I am not a master gardener. So I can write from the an op-ed from the perspective of not being an expert at gardening, like this summer burning my entire front lawn with fertilizer. So that is my expertise, is my lack of expertise. But in general, you really should write about areas where you have if you're a mom, you are an expert at parenting. If you are a teacher, you have a perspective on education in the school system. If you are a business owner, you have a unique perspective on how taxes and government and all of these things affect small businesses. So you do have a level of expertise, but you should write on that level of expertise. You don't have to have a PhD in the area, but you have to have some level of competence. So clarity, courage, and competence are the areas that we encourage people to consider when they are writing an op-ed. Now, that structuring your op-ed is the trickiest part, because there are a couple of things that you really do want to consider. And first, you have to consider your audience, the tone of the outlet. For instance, the Wall Street Journal may have a very different tone than, an online edgy publication. So you have to consider the tone of the audience. You also have to consider the rules that have been set by the publication. And without fail, almost every place where you want to place an op-ed, they tell you what they expect: the word count, the subject matter, the way you are to share it with them. Some outlets want you to email it. Some outlets will not accept an attachment. So first of all, those kinds of things, you definitely need to know the rules, because you don't want your op-ed to be rejected even before it's read. So once you understand kind of the rules of play, like the tools of engagement, the next thing is actually writing the op-ed. So we encourage people to have a hook, like that opening statement has to be sometimes controversial, but definitely clear. That is where you let the reader know exactly what you are going to talk about. Now, after you do the opening where you're describing exactly what you're going to talk about, then you actually make your case. And so one of the things that we really encourage writers to do when they're making their case is to, certainly in this online op-ed space that we're in these days, as you make your case, if you have a claim, it's always helpful for the editor who is reading your op-ed to have the source that you are using to make that claim. For instance, if I say 50% of women like to eat avocados, then link in that space where you say 50% of women like to eat avocados, link to the report from the California Avocado Association that says 50% of women like to eat avocados. The reason that's helpful is because news outlets are not going to print an op-ed just because you make the claim. So if you don't do the research, then they're going to have to do the research. And one thing that we know is that news staffs are understaffed, so they don't want to have to take the time to do all that research. So if you're making a lot of claims in your op-ed, give the source for the claim. So you have your hook, your opening, you make your case, and then your conclusion is really a summary of the case that you made. And the conclusion should be where you have a call to action for politicians, a call to action for your readers, a call to action for yourself. So this is where you actually, once you've made the case, now you explain, now what will we do about it? Well, once you've written your op-ed, hopefully before you wrote your op-ed, you had an idea of who you wanted to send it to, because that should have governed some of your actions, like how many words. If it's 100 words over, then you're out, right? So you want to know who you're going to send it to even before you write it. But but just in case you haven't, the op-ed is written. Now you actually have to go and identify the outlets where you want to send it to. When you're writing an op-ed, you really don't want to send it to multiple outlets at the same time. It's important to send it to one outlet so that they can say yes or no. And if they say no, then you send it to the next outlet. And that's because the New York Times is not going to print an op-ed that is also printed in the Wall Street Journal. And so sometimes that means that you have the op-ed could be, if it's not an evergreen op-ed, and by that I mean if it's time sensitive, then waiting for the New York Times to get back to you, by the time they get back to you, it may be an old subject. So one of the things that we encourage people to do is to take advantage of news wires. And with a news wire, you can actually pay to have your op-ed blasted to multiple outlets. And in some cases, it will be printed in multiple outlets. So if you're sending it out yourself, you really do have to give each news outlet the right of first refusal. So send it to the New York Times, wait for them. Send it to the Washington Post, wait for them. And also, it's important to be realistic. The Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, they get hundreds upon hundreds of op-eds every day from everyone from U.S. senators to soccer moms. And all of those opinions are important, but they only have limited space. So you want to manage your expectations and find an outlet that is realistic for where you want to place it. We really, really encourage people to look at small regional newspapers and smaller news wires. We work with a couple of really impressive news wires that are not very costly, that get a lot of results. So if you don't want to have to go through sending it out individually to every newspaper and waiting, then we do encourage people to look at some of the pretty impressive news wires.
Great. And that was my last question. Leslie, you have anything you want to say here to kind of sum it up?
We are so excited that you are considering opinion editorials. After looking at the stats for women who are underrepresented in the op-ed space, we encourage you to continue to consider it and write it. And actually, I just said opinion editorial, and that's the term that's what we call it. But actually, op-ed stands for the opposite of the editorial page. So I just wanted to make that clarification.